This is the government's great Indian infrastructure dream. But the ground reality is a rude awakening. With a slowing economy, high interest rates and more importantly delayed decision-making, infra projects and infra companies face an uncertain future. So as Pranab Mukherjee gets ready to present Budget 2012, the message is clear. Jumpstart the investment cycle, focus on accelerating infrastructure spending and break the policy logjam. But does the government have the political capital to deliver on the infra promise? To discuss the state of affairs, we have with us in our Bombay studio Rajiv Agarwal, Chairman CII's National Council of Infrastructure and also the Managing Director and CEO of IDFC. Also with us, Rajiv Agarwal, the member CII National Committee on Infrastructure and the Managing Director and CEO of Essar Ports. A. Subbarao, Group CFO of GMR Group, and in Delhi with me in the studio, Vinay Chatterjee, Chairman of the CII Task Force on Regulatory Framework and Infrastructure. And he is, of course, the man who founded Feedback Infra. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on this special CNBC TV 18 CII discussion, Vinayak, because you're here with me in the Delhi studio. So let me start by asking you, if I look at the recommendations that have been sent in to the government from CII in terms of what it ought to do on infrastructure, this could read like the same list of recommendations 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and even 12 months ago. And we had the same discussion 12 months ago sitting at the CII headquarters. Not much has changed, has it?
Some things have changed. You've got infra NBFCs now. Rajiv is there, and so is L&T, and so is SREI. So you've got infra NBFCs, you've got infrastructure bonds.
You've got the FII limit, which was high class.
You've got the FII limit, and you've got IIFCL doing a deep dive on takeout financing. So you've got a few things. So I wouldn't be totally negative, but with your permission, may I add a perspective on the union budget? Because very recently in Delhi, among the think tanks and the discussions on policy and infrastructure, people have been increasingly saying, what is the relevance of the union budget to infrastructure? So I'm actually just going to leave for all of us on the panel some statistics. One, that if you add up the total spends on infra in the last union budget, it was 16% of the total outlays. Roughly about 1.73 lakh crores on the total budget size of 11 lakh crores. So 16% of the union budget, in a sense, gets devolved to infra.
Okay.
More importantly, now people may say, oh, 16% is neither here nor there. But more importantly, in the budget, as you know, is split between plan and non-plan, right? The government can do very little about planned expenditure, salaries, etc. But on non-plan, the share of infra and non-plan is a whopping 48%, which means half of the government's discretionary spend goes to infra.
It is relevant for infrastructure.
You started with 1,000 million or 1 trillion. Remember, the 500 billion target, if you break it down to rupees lakh crores, per annum, the Planning Commission 11th plan figure is 4.5 lakh crores, of which last year was 1.73. So out of the India dream, 38% in one way or the other gets funded by the union budget. So I just want to demolish the hypothesis that the union budget is not relevant.
All right, so the union budget is relevant. With that, Vinay Chatterjee, every year we coin a new phrase of how we should actually look at things. This year, you're talking about what you see as the triple whammy as far as the infrastructure business is concerned. You call it the triple whammy of distress. Why do you say that?
Well, it's very simple. Everybody knows about double whammy, but in infrastructure we do a few things differently, you know, so we call it triple whammy. So the first of the triple whammies is one, declining order books. Across the construction development sector, this year we have found very, very slow, negligible additions to order book, or in a majority of the cases, actually a dip in the order book position. So obviously it shows the context of new project development, right? So that's triple whammy number one. Triple whammy number two relates to breaking the cash cycle. Whether in advances from new orders or raising billings from reaching milestones on projects which are under execution, which have been delayed, or disbursement from banks, or the crash of the stock markets, from all accounts, the cash cycle has been broken. So that's and that's one of the reasons for the high leverage debt, etc. That's triple whammy number two. The triple whammy number three is the combination of these two, including inflation and rising commodity prices, is actually a drop in profitability. So you got this huge triple whammy hitting infrastructure companies, which result in a lot of the woes that you see, you know.
Okay, so it's a sector that's beleaguered at this point in time. Vinay Chatterjee spelling out for us the problems that the sector is faced with. Rajiv Agarwal, we've just talked about the relevance of the union budget as far as infrastructure is concerned. What would your expectations really be? Because if we look at what even the Reserve Bank has said that it is now up to the government to jumpstart the investment cycle, to focus on infrastructure spending, accelerate infrastructure spending. What is your big hope as far as Budget 2012 is concerned for the infrastructure space?
You know, one of the most important developments, as Vinayak was mentioning a minute ago, in the infrastructure space has been the opening up of the FII debt market.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've been struggling to give depth and breadth to the corporate debt market in this country. A few measures taken last year have taken us in that direction. There are a few glitches that remain. And one of the glitches is to do with getting off the ground the much talked about infrastructure debt fund.
Yeah.
And there are issues with respect to withholding taxes that need to be taken care of. They've only been partially taken care of in the announcement to date, but there are two structures for the infrastructure debt fund.
Absolutely.
One is an infrastructure debt fund NBFC, the other one is the infrastructure debt fund mutual fund. So in the NBFC, the withholding tax issues have been more or less taken care of. In the mutual fund structure, they have not.
Okay.
So it would be useful to give a fillip to that initiative if that were addressed. Likewise, you know, we've talked about infrastructure bonds in the past. The reality is that the substantial savings in this country are not being appropriately intermediated into the infrastructure sector. So, and that's point number one. Point number two is that the bulk of our household savings are actually highly concentrated in the hands of high net worth individuals.
Sure.
So is there a role for tax policy to provide an incentive to, let's say, large pools of domestic household savings, especially HNI,
Rajiv Lal, we've had this conversation as far as infra bonds are concerned, tax policy to actually facilitate the movement of money from, for instance, high net worth individuals towards the infrastructure space. But what is your gut telling you? Do you actually believe that this time around we are going to see some forward movement on these tax issues?
My gut is telling me that yes, after many attempts this year, we may get some breakthrough on tax policy with respect to tax concessions to investors in infrastructure paper.
All right, so that's Rajiv Lal sticking his neck out, saying that he believes Budget 2012 is actually going to be able to deliver something as far as tax concessions for infra bonds are concerned. But Mr. Subbarao, let me come to you, because, you know, an issue that perhaps cannot be addressed in the budget is this business of policy logjam. And that is what seems to be impacting the sector the most, because as Vinayak was pointing out, it is the biggest worry at this point in time because it's broken the cash cycle, as he called it. How concerned are you, and do you believe that the recent efforts that we've seen with the Principal Secretary in the Prime Minister's office, Pulok Chatterjee, now being told to fast-track infrastructure projects, etc., is actually going to, give you the desired results?
Yeah, budget need not necessarily the platform where all these measures would be announced, but we are happy with the kind of momentum that has begun in the recent past. So there is a 30-day, 60-day and 90-day plan. At the end of the 90th day, the power sector is the most impacted as of today among all the infrastructure subsectors. And there is an action plan that has been initiated, and we hope that this action plan would be initiated by end of the 90th day. We would see some kind of hope. But coming to the budget, what is going to happen, what government should do, we don't have honestly any expectations, because there's been...
That's pretty candid. You have absolutely no expectations, so you can't go away disappointed if nothing's delivered.
Yeah. Yes, learn to accept what comes your way. So that is the happiest way of living it, living the life. So, but what the government should do, there has been a trust deficit, and you say something today and you go back and change tomorrow. And government should come and make a categorical statement saying that here we stick to the policy. Some of the principal statements the government should make. So whatever they do, and we make the investment based on the government's pronouncement, statement, legislation, and then we do not know the stability of this, and it is going to be rolled over. When we started the infra journey, there was no MAT, minimum alternative tax. There was no dividend distribution tax. Section 2023G was there. All these things over a period of time in the revenue interest have been rolled back and impairing our returns on the investments.
Are you,
so this
are
kind
you
of
worried,
things would
Mr.
not
Subbarao?
influence.
Are you worried, given the government's precarious fiscal deficit position as well as its revenue constraints, are you worried that perhaps we are likely to see even more rollbacks?
So, Shireen, there is that is a bigger discussion. Fiscal deficit. Why is it happening? You have unsustainable subsidies. You have huge interest payments. You have huge social program, which is leaking. In fact, that is the cause of the inflation. So the subsidies, the social programs, kind of Narega, and all these things are creating a money which is not earned, and that has no value for the people who are getting it, and that is what is causing the inflation. So that should be arrested. So for addressing the fiscal deficit, rolling back the promises that have been made is not the solution. You have the solution elsewhere.
So let me ask you then, Mr. Subbarao, given everything that you've just painted,
yes,
is 2012 going to be even worse, far worse for infrastructure companies than the last year, because we haven't been able to address the slow order book situation? The policy logjam clearly continues. We hope that it will break. Interest rates continue to be high. The Reserve Bank has said that we need the government to act before we can take a call as far as interest rates are concerned. Is 2012 looking any better?
No, we've been trained not to think negatively. So keep thinking positively. If you have read The Secret Book, stick
It worries me when businessmen start talking philosophically. It worries me. Rajiv Agarwal, let me come to you. Are you going to be as philosophical as Mr. Subbarao, or do you believe that Budget 2012 could perhaps address some of the woes that the space is faced with at this point in time?
Well, time is ripe. I think we really need some hope. I think, like the other two speakers said, that budget is not really necessarily the only time that action can be taken, but definitely we over the years have been expecting something positive to come in the budget, and it also kind of sets the tone for the year. And I think it's one document which everyone awaits, and whether one is hopeful or not hopeful. So it is always good to have something positive coming in the budget. So I feel that when we're talking about
what would you be looking at in terms of specifics? Rajiv Lal just pointed out a bunch of things that he would expect as far as tax policy is concerned. What would you like to see happen if at all we were to see policy action in the budget?
I think, you see, the infrastructure space is money hungry. So basically you need a lot of money to come into the sector, and money will come in only when people who are investing in this feel safe to invest money. So I think the policies have to be long term. They have to be there for, they can't be changed now and then. What I expect is that, like MAT, for example, this is something which we should exempt the infrastructure companies from MAT.
Mr. Subbarao, is that your sense at this point in time, given the fact that we've now got this special task force that has been set up to look into the issues as far as the power sector is concerned,
yes,
that we are perhaps going to see, as Vinayak was pointing out, some of these issues being addressed? For instance, just look at the demand for Coal India to sign up FSAs at this point in time, which clearly seems to be the message from the government.
Yeah, the people have come back from the first meeting, with a lot of chase and confidence, and we are hopeful that the things would be addressed. Trust the yesterday's Supreme Court decision would not derail this process by refocusing on some other issue. So we are hopeful.
What are you worried about? What are you worried about the impact of the Supreme Court order as far as the 2G case is concerned? Is it the first come, first served issue that you're worried about?
Yeah, but how it might shift the focus from resolving these issues to some other issues, which demand urgent attention. So that could be one danger.
We hope that the government will not be distracted by what's happened, but that really is a political thing. Vinayak, you wanted to jump in on that as well.
I just wanted to say the government is always distracted, but in the middle of those distractions, we are looking for some positive signals. See, on power, the government has a huge challenge in the budget itself, because one of the key issues that the FM has to address squarely is this demand for import duty on imported equipment for power plant, and that too from a particular country. Right?
Yes.
Now, and there are both.
You can say which country it is.
And there are two industry lobbies at work also, because the power producers say, give us the right to shop for the best anywhere in the world.
And the domestic equipment makers say that there should be a higher import.
Not just the equipment makers. Day before yesterday, I saw Mr. Praful Patel on TV arguing.
He's batting for his own
He's batting for BHEL and others. So and the Myra committee has recommended a 14% import duty. The other is, what do you do to address 145,000 crores of accumulated losses of the state discoms?
So what's your gut? Import duty hike?
What's my gut? You're asking me a tough question. I would address it halfway.
Halfway?
I'm not saying 7, but I would do some measures that would give a sense of comfort to Indian domestic manufacturers to say, we recognize your right to participate on a genuinely level playing field.
Okay, Mr. Subra, I want to get a quick comment from you as far as the import duty business is concerned before I get to Mr. Agarwal.
The capex costs have been rising. If the import duties are slashed, we all would be happy. We have been demanding for this.
Slashed.
Okay, all right, Mr. Agarwal, you talked about some of the things that you would like the budget to address, and of course some of those items are outside of the budget, but specifically from your own industry's perspective, what is it that you would like the finance minister to address?
I think the other thing that I would like is that cost of borrowing has to come down, because with the current cost of borrowing in infrastructure sector, it is extremely difficult, especially things like ports, roads, etc., which take a very, very long time to really come about. So I would say that if some means of making maybe a refinancing of the existing loans possible, where they have allowed some 25% of the ECB raise to be used for refinance, maybe up to 100% of the earlier loans to be refinanced, if that is possible. At least the cost of funding will come down. So I think that's something which we'll definitely look at, and of course money to be made available easily in the sector, because these are the two things which will also improve the climate and also the returns on investment in the sector.
Rajiv Lal, you just heard what Mr. Agarwal had to say. Again, I'm going to ask you to stick your neck out. Do you believe that the government is actually going to implement some of those recommendations?
See, I think the most important thing that the budget could do for the infrastructure sector is to actually deliver a budget that gives some line of sight towards fiscal consolidation over time. If they are credibly able to give that signal to the markets, it will help the RBI in actually managing the interest rates downwards, reduce the cost of capital, and more than anything else, individual tax benefits here or there, more than anything else, that would be a huge, huge benefit to the infrastructure
sector. Rajiv Lal, what's your own assessment of the kind of fiscal slippage that we're likely to see? Because, the government, the only upside as far as the 2G issue or the 2G imbroglio is concerned is the government may be sitting on another spectrum bonanza as far as 2G auctions are concerned. But what's your own assessment of the fiscal slippage? Because the Reserve Bank also pretty constrained that till we see a roadmap as far as fiscal consolidation is concerned, it would be unable to temper the monetary cycle.
Yeah, so that is precisely what I'm concerned about, and I think that as we approach electioneering season at the national level, gearing up for elections in 2014, it would require extraordinary leadership and discipline for them to credibly show a path to fiscal consolidation and greater fiscal discipline. So it's a tough ask, and I think a lot depends on the UP election results, and it's for good reason that the budget date has been postponed. So if the UP election results are constructive for the UPA, I expect a good budget. Then there's a prospect that we get into a virtuous cycle. A confident government takes leadership, delivers the proper signals through the budget, and follows through on all the other policy agendas that have been lagging for a while. So actually everything depends on the UP election.
So wrap up comments, Mr. Subra, I'm going to start by asking you 3 priorities that you think the government needs to address.
The first thing is the fiscal consolidation. They have to make efforts to reduce the fiscal deficit. That would do 3 good things for us. It makes more and more capital available for the infra industry. It reduces the cost of capital, and it reduces the inflation. And certain key policy announcements, the budget can be made a platform to make announcements, and all airports can be privatized. And the power industry, the government has to make a promise that the power industry issues would be resolved if they are not resolved by that time. And the urban infra is a huge space for making the investments. And government should come out with a policy that model concession agreements would be rolled over for various parts of the urban infrastructure. So that would, in fact, re-engineer and put back the life in the infrastructure by bringing huge capital. And third, we must do all that is necessary to be done to invite the foreign. There is huge money available in the world. We must do, the budget has to give that kind of feeling to all the people in all the investors in the world, that they can trust this country and put the capital in this country.
Rajiv Lal, on the last point, because I think a lot of the issues that Mr. Subbarao has just talked about is something that all our panelists have agreed on. But on the last point of actually getting foreign direct investment into this country, do you think we're looking better on that front post what's happened with the 2G judgment? Are we looking worse?
Yesterday's decision has confused things a little bit. I'm trying to put myself in Telenor's position. I suspect I'd be quite upset at this point. But in a longer term sense, I'd have to argue that yesterday's decision it was a tough one, but on balance probably a right one. I expect that after a period of some uncertainty, the serious players will come back on the table, will bid again in an auction, and will be able to resume their operations on the ground. So this storm will blow over. But really, again, I'd like to re-emphasize that we'd require a confident government to further signal its openness to inviting foreign capital. And one of the things that could restore credibility very quickly, if the government were able to do it, is to approve some form of FDI in multi-brand retail. So that, along with
indications are that it's not going to happen.
Signal.
Indications are multi-brand retail is not going to happen.
Well, again, I go back to the UP elections. We'll see what happens after that.
It comes back to the UP elections. 10 seconds, Rajiv Agarwal. Your number one priority as far as infra is concerned.
Well, I think I would say that, if you can get some incentives like MAT credit and some kind of, ECB refinancing possible, I think that will help money to flow into the sector. And of course, the fiscal consolidation is absolutely necessary, without which nothing is possible. And we could have, the government could, the country would definitely not be seeing too much of investment in the infrastructure space.
So Vinayak Chatterjee, we should have been discussing UP. Why are we discussing infrastructure?
We can discuss UP now.
We can discuss UP now. All right, gentlemen, we will wait to see what the UP results look like, and we will wait to see what the Finance Minister has to deliver as far as the infrastructure promise is concerned. Triple whammy that the sector is facing, as Vinayak Chatterjee pointed out. Hopefully some of those issues will be addressed this time around in Budget 2012. Appreciate your time and joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Many thanks for watching.